Welcome back to The Manual, podcast where we talk about the stuff most men's podcasts are too afraid to touch. Today's episode is going to be wild, raw, and real. Buckle up. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to week 3, part 3 of the Sex Talk You Never Got series. We're working through Sam Jolman's book under the same name. We stole it from him, not him from us. We've been deeply impacted by this book. Nick introduced it to me a few months back, and we both started reading it. We were coming to the end of the Nice Guy series, and I said, this feels like the perfect thing to launch into. It certainly fits our work, what we're doing every day, what those of you who are listening to this are also interested, trying to get in your own life. And I think it's such a unmet, needed place in all of us, whether it be about sex specifically or about how we experience the world more generally. So we're super excited to dive in, and we're talking about chapter 2. Maybe some of you have bought the book and are reading along with us. That would be an awesome way to unpack this together. We hope you are. We recommend that you go and buy the book. Certainly in each of these episodes, I mean, so much of each of these chapters could fill many hours worth of podcasting, not simply one. So certainly go buy the book wherever you can find books. There it is. But today we're going through chapter 2, titled God Most Wants Your Awe, Not Your Purity. So we're going to talk about purity culture, what awe is, why sex is so integral in awe, and vice versa, and why arousal and desire are so crucially important to form rather than to repress or to let run wild, and how we fall into terrible, terrible places in life, ones that certainly none of us want to live when we let one of those two things happen, or those are done to us in formation, especially in our early years. So in chapter 2, Jolman makes one of the most provocative claims in the book, that purity, as most of us received it, was never actually God's primary goal for our sexuality. Awe was. Purity culture handed us a system built around behavior management and fear of failure. But Jolman argues God's deepest invitation isn't don't mess up or don't act out. It's don't miss the wonder. This chapter asks what changes when we stop treating sexuality as a moral obstacle course and start treating it as a doorway into something transcendent. So, Nick, I want to start here with you. Reading this chapter, what were you most deeply impacted by, moved by? What created curiosity for you? Just looking at this at sort of the 30,000 foot view. Yeah, where did you land after reading this chapter?
Overall, I think we hit on it last week, but we talked about porn isn't that it shows too much, it shows that it shows too little. He talks about lust isn't that it's just reveals too much, is that it reveals too little. And from an early age, and I'm going to kick us off with the opening story, that just to kind of couch the conversation in and to kind of launch us. He talks about this little boy who has this transcendent experience, which oftentimes our first experience of a woman, you know, where we see her can be this transcendent experience that, and there's a mixed bag of purity culture in the church. It's done some good. There's been a whole economy built out of it in the church. And I even think I've shared before, my little sister wrote her purity card and actually gave it to her husband on their wedding day. Like, pretty freaking cool, pretty powerful. But I think we've missed the forest for the trees, and we've made it all about that, where we've conflated holiness and purity. And he challenges that a lot. And we, rather than getting curious, we repress. Rather than exploring what's underneath the desire, what are the deeper, truer, more honest and real and holy desires, we can repress our sexuality. So really the whole chapter is an invitation to awe, to wonder, to beauty, to glory, to exploration, and to getting curious. So if it's cool, I just want to open it up the first story from the chapter. Does that work?
Love it.
So it kicks off. Come on, let me show you something. Kyle and his friend Tommy had been playing video games all Saturday morning in Tommy's bedroom. There's problem number one. That was my addition. The virtual adventure of the game was fun, but Tommy had a real life adventure in mind. He led Kyle down the hall, ever so quietly, to his parents' bedroom. Kyle followed across the threshold with absolute hush. Parents' bedrooms are not actually permitted places of play. This felt daring. Once inside, Tommy unearthed a magazine from his father's nightstand drawer and sat on the bed flipping through the pages. Kyle moved close enough to get a look. His heart began to race. A naked woman peered back at him with her glistening body on full display. He had never seen anything like this. Suddenly, Tommy's mother called his name from downstairs. Tommy shoved the magazine back in his dad's nightstand, and with all the speed the two boys could muster, they raced out of the room and dove onto the floor of his bedroom, back to the video game they had been playing all morning. Later that night, at home, Al could still recall the warmth he felt inside his body. It stayed with him all day long. A new world opened up to him, and with it came an unbelievable excitement. As he lay in his bed, staring wide eyed at the ceiling, he prayed with pure innocence: God, thank you for naked women. The story is complex, like almost all of our stories of sexuality. I imagine you felt danger as much as anything else. This is a story of many things, including an evil assault against Kyle's heart. His father's use of porn is devastating in itself, and the impact on both boys is a story of sexual violation. That's important to call out. All of our experience of porn for the first time was a level of trauma, right, and violation. But he says there is so much broken here, but it's also the story of Kyle's innocent heart bearing witness to beauty, and with it, the natural, pure desire to say thank you. I love that he launches into that story because it's a whole mixed bag. I mean, even as I was reading it the first time and reading it again right there, there's like things that are stirred up within me, this glistening woman body being revealed on display, and like this whole body experience, like chemicals flowing through your body. Um and we know that innately there's something there's something wrong here, which is why they close it and run back to where they were. But as he went back to it that night, I love the innocent, pure prayer of that boy. God, thank you for naked women. And it just reminds me, Bob Schuth says, and we've said it before, underneath every desire, no matter how disordered, is a good and holy desire, is an unmet need, and is a wound. And so it's both this wounding experience, it's wheats and tares here. It's wounding, but also it's this thank you, God. And the danger he talks about in this chapter, and we want to break open here, is we repress that. We shut that part of us down. And when we shut that part of us down, and that curiosity, sincere curiosity, this exploration, uh, this curiosity and awe, we don't feel that legitimate need in our heart, and so the counterfeit's going to keep coming in. So we have these needs of gratitude to be filled, and a heart to be filled, and wonder and awe to fill those places in our heart. And the danger is we don't go there, we repress it, we shame, and nature abhors a vacuum, and the counterfeit's going to come in. So Jim, just curious, as we read that, what stands out to you?
He it makes me think of the end of the chapter where he talks about uh the man who I think his name's Mike,
Yeah,
gives a quote about seeing his wife's naked body.
yeah,
and has a very similar experience, a very Song of Songs type experience
Mhm.
of the kind of enwrapping beauty
Yeah.
and that kind that sort of, I don't wanna say inundates, but fills him with this wonder and awe and connects him to that physiological sense of beholding glory, which throughout the chapter, Sam Jolman talks about, you know, in scripture, people's encounter with God, and there's this kind of fear response, but this safety and stay. They don't run from it. They're thrown down to the ground. The amygdala is going on, but then there's this also this safety with it of I want to stay here. I want to be beholding this glory. This is good that I'm here. And so it, sort of juxtaposing those two things against each other, again, the innocent, like his body, his mind are responding in innocence the way that he's meant to, that he's designed to go to gratitude, to awe, to wonder, to for his body to, he describes it as warmth, to be moved by it, right? And but that there's this lack, which Sam points out, of the formation, of the to knowing what to do with it, to know how to rightly order it, that's missing in the story. And that's, again, you said it, Nick, is usually our experience of early exposure, right? Is that it is intoxicating. It draws us in we usually, because of that experience, begin to associate that experience as evil rather than as good, right? That I shouldn't have this, that I shouldn't be as aroused by this as I am, that it's wrong that this is that I desire this. I remember a passage, and you have a similar story, Nick, that maybe you'll share after I share this one, about a Jewish rabbi who was mentoring college students, and the college students, men and women, were going out camping for a weekend, and they were all gonna sleep in, I forget what this exact circumstance, but sleep in the same tent or go on this camping trip together or whatever. And he basically questioned them of like, "Is that a good idea? Uh, will you be able to continue to live in virtue in that context?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, it's no big deal. Like we're not attracted to them. Like we won't care. It won't be a problem." And his response was kind of that innocent, like, how could you go into the wilderness in a place that draws on our beauty and awe,
Huh.
and then behold beauty and awe in human form and not be drawn by it? Like, there's a problem there. Like, this is an issue, not an opportunity. The fact that you've dulled your capacity to be able to be allured by physical beauty is a massive issue, not a sign that you've harnessed that part of you, that you've put it into right order, that it is well formed. So that's what that stands out to me the most, that we've, for so many of us, because of early exposure, I think most frequently wrongly associated that arousal, that enrapture, that gratitude, that intoxication as evil rather than as good.
Want to go with it? Two, this is the sex talk you never got, right? And most of us didn't have a space to process, to allow that. And that's both like physically, like physiological, like what is happening in my body? And then how do I like process this intellectually and conceptually? And when there's no space to do that, and not only that, this, and we're going to keep kind of jumping in and out of the purity culture conversation within the church, there's this, when we're not having an honest conversation about it, I can view it as like, this is bad. And we conflate arousal or desire with lust. And I would propose many times when men think they're lusting, they're not so much lusting as they're aroused. And what's the line? I don't know, Lord, search our hearts, but he gives this example at the end of the chapter of this man who claims he's conquered lust. He's done it. And again, this is where we think like the goal and if a guy coming to our program, we tell a guy right away, this isn't about porn. This is about, we say, ruling your kingdom. And what does that mean? There's a whole bunch of what that means. It means getting in touch with your heart, stewarding your heart, becoming aware, feeling fully, naming fully what's going on, and welcoming that experience fully. He gives a story. He says, I know a man who announced to his wife that he had conquered lust. He claimed he was so pure that he was no longer moved by beautiful women. Didn't even notice them, he said. His wife sat across from him at Starbucks, aghast in disbelief when he told her this. About that time, an attractive woman walked past their table. His wife asked, so you didn't even notice her? Nope, he said. Something in her heart dropped. He realized that if this was true, he could not behold her beauty either. You can't you can't locally anesthetize, I guess you could say, um, particular parts of your heart. Like if you numb your ability to suffer and feel pain, you're gonna numb your experience to feel beauty and awe and wonder. And similarly, if we try to just shut down our sexuality and repress it, and rather than allow it to be transformed, we shut down our ability to experience beauty and to be taken captive our spouses and God even. And which is why he says the whole point of this God doesn't isn't just after your purity. Purity is a means to an end. We'll talk about that end, but he wants your awe and your curiosity. So
Yeah. Yeah, and curiosity is a really interesting thing. What is being curious about something creates? It creates in some ways an insatiable desire to know that thing, to understand it,
mm,
to become proficient in it,
yeah,
right? And which again goes back to why he wrote this book at the beginning, why I think this is such a crucial topic, because as he says, like, we don't need a sex talk, we need hundreds of conversations
right.
about this topic, and not just sex specifically, but what it's driving us towards. And here talking about awe and how to have it and how to develop it. And then to be taught, right, through words, but also behavior. What does it mean? Where did you see examples in your life of adults being drawn to awe and wonder, to living lives of adventure and calling and purpose and intent in a way that showed you sort of the image bearer of that kind of fulfillment, that self-possession of the model of what awe and wonder looks like? And I think many of us would be challenged to come up with 1, 2, or 3 people that we could talk about that we grew up around that were in possession of that even if we weren't verbally taught it by our primary caregivers, not even to experience people who are actively living it also leaves us with a stark contrast between the curiosity and then sort of the one who can fulfill that curiosity for us. Who do I go to, right? And so then you get back to the porn conversation. The average age of introduction is 10 to 11 for boys, a little older for girls. But that becomes the place where you're introduced, where the confident, self-possessed, capable people who seem really, really in control and in command of their own sexuality and know exactly what to do with it and how to perform it and how to draw you into it, becomes the teacher, becomes the way, becomes the source of the development of awe and wonder. And certainly in that case, then you get into that other ditch, right? Virtue is in the middle. If purity culture is in one ditch and repression is the end result of that, you get the permissiveness, which he talks about when he talks about purity culture. And I want to read a little
Mm,
bit from what he talks about in that section, because I think it's really worth considering. Uh, these two ditches so that we can find what virtue actually looks like. What does it look like to develop formed, integrated wholeness in this area of my life? And this section is titled "The Goal of Your Sexuality." He said, if you grew up around the church, you probably absorbed the idea that the most important aim of your sexuality is purity. But that leads into all kinds of difficult struggles with desire that look more like repression than transformation. And if you grew up guided by the broader culture outside the church, permissiveness masquerading as empowerment or blessing,
Mm.
limited only by the principle of consent, was probably the implied message related to sexuality. Both messages seem so lacking to me. Neither purity nor permissiveness can bless pleasure or speak to all the ways the body integrates with the heart. What is the goal of sexuality? What does a man's sexuality move him to do? Where does his sexual energy take him? Then skipping down a bit, he says, your sexuality as a man was meant to drive you to awe and gratitude, which again, we led off with that story. That's what that boy experienced, right? The danger, the fear, the I shouldn't be doing this, something about this feels off, the shame associated with that, but also and significantly predominantly in his innocence, because he didn't know that it was wrong. Uh, he felt awe in his body, in his mind. He was in awe and experienced gratitude, right? He was feeling what he ought to feel, but not knowing what to do with it because of that lack of formation. And then he talks about, he references some studies of researchers have studied the impact of awe, and they drew this conclusion. He says people who experienced more awe in their lives were happier, more generous, more helpful, more cooperative, more ethical, and more humble. And then he goes on to say that even people who just experienced awe for a moment were changed by it. And I think that's, again, he's beckoning, he's calling us to something, to higher up, to outside of us, to an expansive view, which is so often the case. If you want to know if you're in one of the ditches, pay attention. Has your view been narrowed or expanded? Right? That's the offer of
Mm.
permissiveness, is if, oh, you can,
Yeah.
it will offer a broad view that don't go to this, the rules, that getting outside the rules will offer you the capacity to behold and to possess and to have whatever you want. Well, that's certainly not the case. Every guy that comes to us talks about the tunnel vision, automated, locked in, not having the capacity to choose thing that has happened with the unbridled use of pleasure, right? So that's clearly not happening. And what he's acknowledging is that neither of these ways of living, neither of these philosophies, these set of principles that have been offered by Christian culture at large, and then by broader culture, secular culture, if you will, actually lead to the expansive view, which is what God designed us for altogether. And I experienced that in my own life as I cycled off of craving and using pornography for pleasure. Several months into that, I started to experience things around me, everyday normal things, as
Mm.
rewarding, as pleasurable. Going for a walk in the woods and all of a sudden feeling like I was in it in a way that I can't even necessarily really articulate, that it's difficult to a struggle for me to fully put into words, that I felt the aliveness of it. The colors hit different, right? It's, I mean, in some kind of ways, kind of like a mini psychedelic trip. Now, I've never had one, so I don't know that I could say that entirely accurately, but this kind of like everything is more real, more available to me, that I am in it, right? And that's what God wants, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to draw us into the story, but not just in the story in a way that we can intellectually understand, but into a story that we can operate in bodily form, that we can experience with all of its vastness, with its expansiveness. And that's what awe is.
Definition I know you've used around this, addiction is a narrowing. What is that again?
Yeah, addiction. This is Dr. Andrew Huberman's definition of addiction. And addiction is anything that narrows the array of things that gives us pleasure,
Yeah.
right? And repression does that, right? By
Yeah.
saying, "Don't have it, never
Yeah.
go to it, and really don't be curious about it. It's bad."
Yeah. Yeah.
And permissiveness in
Yeah.
secular
That's right.
culture says, "Have it all, you can have it all," and that will lead to freedom, that will lead to full self-expression, but the danger is in pursuit of that unbridled, only mitigated by
Yeah.
consent, uh, you get locked in. That
Yeah.
same sort of in a certain kind of sense, suppression, repression happens
Hmm.
where this is the only thing that brings fulfillment, so you
Yeah.
must go to it again in order to be okay.
So good. Yeah. It's this interesting principle that those two ends of the spectrum, the repression, but I want to highlight the permissiveness piece when you have access to everything you want. And now it's just in our pockets right now. And the whole world is at our fingertips and whatever you want on demand and just what the consequence or the effect of that is this narrowness, myopic view, tunnel vision, inability to experience delight and pleasure. And the opposite is true. When we get sucked into the moment, and he says beauty is so much more than mm, the physical appearance, and it's about presence, about being in this moment. It's being enraptured, whether it's by, I've never ridden a horse, but I've always wanted to, but I've heard this wild, fierce experience. And he talks about awe being this terrifying goodness. And I've never been uh to the Grand Canyon, but I've heard like this in the experience, whether it's with the naked body of your wife, that you have a moment of just awe, and or your bride walking down the aisle, or nature and God's glory showing through this experience of being captured, really taken captive by the moment, this terrifying goodness. It opens you up to the fullness of life, and it makes you, as I think Dracker Phillips was the guy he's quoting, wrote the book on awe, and he's a secular guy. This is really cool. And the highest form of awe is moral goodness. When people experience others being morally good, which is just so cool, that this you're drawn into it, and you feel so small. And part of this, you're an interconnected part of the whole cosmos, and it's a whole body experience. He says, back to the book on page 35, he says, terrifying goodness sounds oxymoronic, like dry rain or giant ants, ideas that might work for a fairy tale, but not in real life. We have trouble categorizing it, kind of like what you were talking about. It's such a dynamic experience, it becomes kind of static when we put it into words. He says, when we experience awe, we are overcome with something we cannot look away from. Again, it's interesting, right? We also have this narrowing myopic view, and permissiveness comes, and I cannot look away from this. I'm sucked in, but it's narrow. But the experience of awe, we're overcome. We are overcome by something we can't look away from. And in the words of Dan Allender, awe is being afraid of something that we are simultaneously drawn to. It's a wild experience, he says, one
Yep.
to which we have very little to compare. And I know I was sharing with you this. So it's like, what is awe? And we talk about he talks about the fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And when people, anytime an angel showed up, the command is fear not, because it's this terrifying experience. And we've I think we've downplayed and we've domesticated fear of the Lord in the church. And it's like, oh, it's just about awe and wonder. Okay, well, maybe, but let's define our terms. What's that? What does that mean? And anytime, in the Old Testament, when there was fear and awe, and they then God showed up, they fell on their faces and worshipped. And this image I was sharing with you before we pressed record, one of the better images I've kind of have in my mind, an icon of the fear of the Lord. Teresa, she was sharing with me when she was 8 years old, in her room, with Ruthie. Uh, and there was a mouse that ran across the floor and got trapped in the room and couldn't get out. And Teresa was freaking out. She screamed, and then her dad walks up the stairs, comes into the room barefooted, and walks up to the mouse and smashes it with his feet, just crushes it. And she says, I remember in that moment, Nick, and I couldn't put it into words, but I was both terrified of my dad, but also felt completely safe. I had this thought. She said, I had the thought, like, he could do that to me, but he won't. But he could, but he won't. I know who he is. He's the icon of security and safety for me, but I see what he's capable of. And isn't that God? Like, actually, the
Yeah.
Lion of Judah could destroy me,
Yeah.
but he won't.
Yeah.
But he could, but he won't. And so this is both, and it's made man. His nature is made manifest in all of creation, especially the wild fierceness of creation and the untamed parts of the world. Where just is this being captured by the moment and this narrowing. I'm sorry, this being captured by the moment is an expansive reality that opens you up to the fullness of life.
Yeah. Yeah. On page 37, it says, many of us have had the same fear tactic used to scare us to pursue sexual purity. We live with the fear
Yeah,
that God will roar in anger at us if we mess up sexually. I know men who shake in terror when something goes wrong in their life, fearing God is punishing them for masturbating or looking at a woman lustfully. It makes me think of a friend of ours who thinks or who thought when he was younger that acting out sexually opened up demon portals. But I believe this gets the heart of God wrong. God wants to awe us, not terrify us, into relationship. He does not want us to simply behave ourselves like scolded children. He wants to move us. And the only way for this to be true for him is for him to be truly good. Yes, God is powerful. God thunders and booms. God flashes and flames and glows hot with glory, like you were just talking about, Nick, in creation. His presence disrupts. People fall flat on their faces because of a bodily fear reaction so primal that it could hardly be called reverent or even spiritual. It triggers the brain's autonomic danger system, the amygdala, the part of our brain that consistently sifts our sensed experience for danger before we are even consciously aware of what we are seeing. Our amygdala is processing pre-conscious feelings about it, sensing the level of safety. The amygdala is what enables us to jump before we even fully register the presence of a snake in front of us. But God always invokes more than simple terror. People don't just run, they
yeah,
stick around, held by something more. Though fear may also be an ingredient, there's something else going on with awe that keeps us from outright fleeing the scene. As you were talking about that, Nick, I thought about a stat heard some years ago or read somewhere some years ago about 1 in 3 children by the age of 13 will sexually experiment with a peer. I reckon to guess that that number is much higher today than it was 10 plus years ago when I read
yeah,
that. But he talks about that behaving like scolded children. What's usually the reaction to the expression of curiosity as children begin to push the boundaries of what's safe? They get scolded. They get, don't do it, right? It gets brushed off or brushed under the table. It gets an awkward response. And what do what's the message they receive with that? As they attempt to be able to integrate this curiosity, yes, in a wrong, unhelpful way that's not good for them and the person that they're acting out with. What do they get? They get shame. They get rules. They get don't do that. They get your curiosity is bad, right? That's the formation they receive, and the curiosity becomes the problem rather than the adult's formation or transformation of that curiosity, right? And that's where the real miss is that children are curious by nature. We talked to, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Nick, when we talked about using anatomical terms about forming our children earlier on in age appropriate ways of bringing them into the conversation about their bodies, about how they're created physically, about helping them be curious about it and responding to their curiosity. One of the things I'm most amazed about raising kids, I have a 9, 6, 4, and 9-month-old, is especially my daughter, because she's the oldest one, it just is like clockwork. She asks the right question at the right times, and I'm always blown away by it. Like, there is curiosity. This is a silly example, but in the past couple of weeks, I was just talking about my wife with it. She started to ask us pretty much every day I drive her to school. She asks about a different scenario, about somebody breaking into the house and what she should do. And it really isn't prompted by anything. There's nothing that's happened. There's no movie we've watched. There's no book she's read about it, because I've gotten curious with her about, like, where's this coming from? Why are you thinking about this? But she's just asking about, Dad, if Judah were sleeping upstairs and I were in the kitchen and someone broke in the front door, what do I do in that scenario? Right? And there's a way that you could respond. That would never happen. You're totally safe. Don't worry about it. But it doesn't honor her curiosity, that she's becoming aware of that. She's starting to think through things and think ahead in life about things of, how should I react? She's starting to feel fear and ask, what do I do with fear if something creates fear in me? What do I do with that? And so it's been so much fun to be able to respond with her and both logic it out with her. Well, if Judah's upstairs asleep with her and someone comes through the front door, I want you to run out the back door, go through our side gate, go to our neighbor's house, tell them there's a stranger in our house and ask for help. Right? And to be practical with her, she's trying to work out, how do I resolve this fear in me? What do I do with that? But then to also broaden it and talk to her about fear and what does that do? What does that do in us? And how do we respond to it? And, she's like, well, shouldn't I run upstairs and get Judah? And, it's like she's thinking through all of these scenarios, and she wasn't doing that a year ago. She wasn't doing that 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And this understanding of curiosity and responding to it with curiosity, being able to be in it with them, leads to such rich, deep, right timed conversations that both respects their developmental stage where they're at, but also my experience has been, it comes sooner than you're ready to have that conversation. If I were going to choose, when do I have stranger danger conversations with my 9-year-old daughter, it probably wouldn't be at 9. Right? It probably, like, my perception of her is that's too early. She's not driving a car. She doesn't spend time at other people's houses without us unless it's a very close friend or family member. Like we keep her safe. So she doesn't need it yet, but she has this curiosity that's inviting now, years before she needs it, so that when she has it and the risk is there, she's ready for it. Right?
Yeah, it's not about the stranger danger. What's it about? You said it. It's she's asking, even subconsciously, what do I do with this fear that's inside of me? And if we just shut it down, knowing, let's just say, for a sake of example, there's zero chance that will ever happen. Let's just
Yeah.
say it. We would shut down that part of her by saying that's not ever going to happen, because it's less about the actual external. It's almost always the case, but actually what is happening inside of you.
Yeah.
So you validate it, you meet her in it, you help her explore and let that out. And there's a space for all of this stuff that's in me, in this culture that is hopefully good soil for me to grow in, is processed
Yeah.
and is explored. It's like, oh, because it's just out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, especially with kids. And
Yeah.
it's like, and we can meet you in it. And just because it's more about meeting their heart,
Yeah.
meeting them in that, even if it's totally outlandish. I'm sure we could think of crazier examples, but just meeting them in what, because a lot of these things are too heavy for them. They can't even really conceptually grapple with it.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about their heart. And yeah, and for our sexuality, for a lot of us, it's been the experience, and oftentimes because the parents haven't navigated their own work, and there is a fear of their kid says that something happened to them, or they explored with another kid, or hey, they're like, you just get, because of fear, they shut it down. Don't ever do that. It's like, well, yeah, this isn't really about just compliance. God
Right.
wants to make us holy, not through behavior modification or through compliance or through rules primarily, but as Jolman's proposal on the table is he wants to awe into holiness.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, in part because we're reading this book right now, but I thought about that conversation and those conversations like one of those hundreds of conversations he's talking about, right? We're not
Hmm,
talking about sex or
totally.
sexuality, but what does she get if I respond with, "You don't have to worry about that, you're safe." I tell her implicitly, "I'm not I I am not safe for the things that you feel or are curious about." I think that's what she walks away with more than anything else is, "Don't bring it up, it's not a big problem," right? "I got it handled," right? And by closing the door, I'm communicating well, clearly she's thinking it, and like you said, she's feeling it,
Right.
right? And if I say, like, "Even if it would never happen, your feeling's not important," right? Which is the same thing about sexuality, like, when she comes of age, Will she will there be near danger of her getting pregnant or having sex? No, probably not. Right? It's probably like the order of our life and the boundaries that we have will are very likely to keep her from having access to the thing that could create danger for her. But that's not the point. The point is that formation takes time. Right? And when she's ready for it and when she can handle it and she can hold it, and the curiosity is there that it's important to begin to steward it then. And then extending that to our adult selves, right? We find ourselves having not received that formation, many of us, as Sam Jolman's talking about. What do we do with that? And I think we need to give Nick, we talk about this a lot in our process of getting curious, but awareness without judgment, that there's desires in us, that there's unmet needs, that there's longings. There's things that have just been shut down. Don't go there. Don't deal with it. Right. And the only time that it gets dealt with or expressed is when we lose ourselves, when we go into automation, when we're on a website, right? That we're trying to find the answer or the solution to that. Well, if that's the only place that's ever giving you that answer and you stop, well, then the only thing you have left is repression, which isn't wholeness, which isn't integration. And so not only do you have to stop the learned solution to the problem, but you also have to deeply consider what are the problems that's led me here. And one of those problems for many of us is this repression around curiosity,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Whether it be we acted out in that curiosity, got caught with pornography, or got caught acting out with other peers when we were younger, and we got slapped for it, or got wrist slapped, or what it was shamed for it, whatever, or that we just knew implicitly, keep it hidden. Don't tell. Adults are not safe with this. I will get in trouble if this is bad, right? That even if it doesn't get exposed, I think every one of us grows up with a certain sense of this is bad, right? And it's really, again, going back, and I think we can tie the bow here on this episode, going back to the story, is that the exposure was bad, but the response to it was good, was natural, was holy. To experience awe and gratitude for something that is a part of God's creation, even if the means by which you were exposed to it were wrong, were evil, were not healthy, your response to it was still good.
Totally.
We need
That's
to
so
learn
good.
to give permission for the response again, so
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
have pointing out you going again to what you talked about mid-episode about the story of the man who said, I finally have full possession and discipline. I've developed mastery over lust. I no longer feel. I no longer feel," right? And his wife's response of, "If you no longer feel, then you're no longer accessible to
Yeah.
me,
That's
and
right.
that's a problem."
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want that. That's not
Yeah.
good for me, and it's not good for you.
Totally.
And
Yeah,
so
we tell
yeah.
guys in the system to learn to confess the desire before you confess the deed. What do we mean? And confession can have a negative connotation on it. Confession is just telling the truth. Our favorite definition for confession is tell the truth. So rather than just tell somebody I did this, it's learn to tell the truth about the desire. I have a desire to do this, or I'm aware of even physiological cravings happening within me. I just had a good call with a coach, a guy yesterday, over 200 days. He's doing so awesome. I said, "Hey, how's craving been this past week?" He goes, "Yeah, I had a couple moments. Um, there was a really beautiful woman I saw, and I was aware of things happening within me. And there was like stuff being stirred up. And I got curious and was just like, yeah, that's normal. That's that's a natural response. And I'm okay. The problem is when we view that as a threat, and we can tell we view it as a threat when we try to just shut it down. It's not a threat. A natural response. Like the guy sitting at the table, the natural response is to be drawn by her beauty, you know, and there's an objectivity to beauty and a subjective experience to it as well, but learning to explore and just get curious, like, I have a desire for this and I'm aware of this, and it dispels this tyrannical experience of it over you and allows you just to be and to rest in your body. So listener, our question for you is where did God, or where did you rather learn that God's primary concern about your sexuality was whether you kept the rules and stayed pure? And what would it mean to you? You know, in your body, and not just like your intellectual theology, but if he actually wanted, what he actually wanted for you was your wonder, was your awe. Because one another definition we love for addiction is it's an illegitimate way to fill a legitimate need, habituated over time without the ability to stop on your own. What's the legitimate need? Beauty, wonder. There's the defensive strategies, block this, don't go there, and the offensive strategies. And the offensive strategy is wonder, awe, exploration with creation, beauty, filling your mind, heart, body, soul with goodness and beauty, transcendent experiences. Next week, we're going to talk about another one of those transcendent experiences, which is play, getting wrapped up in the moment of play, and praise God for kids because they take us back to that moment to be present and to get lost in that. And we're talking about sex as play. So really excited for that conversation next week. Thanks for journeying us with guys with this. If you haven't gotten the book, we highly recommend it. Sam Jolman's book, The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. Thanks for being us with you guys. We'll see you next week.